All right. Thank you, Brad, Kyle, and Dahlia, for joining me here today on Vonvo.com to discuss the Israeli and Palestinian conflict going on right now. Just to get started, why don't we start with Dahlia and go down the line? Could everyone give me a quick bio of where they're at, located right now, their religion and ethnicity, anything just for the viewers to know where everyone comes from?
Okay, starting with me.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm right now in Germany. I've lived here all my life. I've been born and raised in Germany, but my father is Iranian and my mother is originally Palestinian from Jenin, and I just came back from there for a little trip, doing some journalistic work over there. And my religion, I don't really put myself into a certain religion, so
Okay,
I was
great,
born as a Muslim, I guess.
great. Kyle, why don't you go next?
Hello, my name is Kyle. I'm from the Chicagoland area, and I've been involved in the Palestinian struggle for a number of years now.
Okay,
I
and
can't hear you that good. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had problems hearing that also.
Kyle, you want to raise your volume a little bit?
Or take your what's called in your mic and hold it up a little bit closer to your mouth.
Is this a little better?
A lot better.
Yeah.
Good. Well, like I said, my name is Kyle. I'm 27, and I'm from the Chicagoland area, and I've been involved in the Palestinian struggle for a number of years now.
Okay, great. And Brad, why don't you go ahead?
I'll go ahead. I'm just going to start by, I'm very curious to hear what that even means, Kyle, but Brad Legum from New York, Long Island, and I have firsthand experience in this conflict as I actually served in the IDF for about 2.5 years on the front lines there, and also lived right on the border with Gaza.
Okay, great. So, obviously this will then make for a very, intriguing conversation. Just before we get started, obviously what I just want to lay out there for everyone is just a few ground rules. Obviously we want this to be a valuable conversation. So, please, restrain as much as you can, even if you disagree with what someone's saying. Please restrain from, any personal attacks on anyone, insults or racist remarks. Let's just try and, as best as we can, make it a civil conversation. And if we can try, like, not having everyone talk over one another, because that'll make the video that much better. So, obviously we'll hand out time accordingly. But yeah, past that, I think we then are, good to go. So I'll start with Brad. A few weeks back when the ceasefire occurred, what were your thoughts about that going down, and how do you feel about it now a few weeks later, and could you elaborate on that?
Sure. When it was going down, I thought it was an interesting turn of events. This isn't something new and surprising. In the past, this has gone from, since the disengagement in, I think it was 2000 or 2001, there's been a constant barrage of missiles from Gaza into the state of Israel. The Gaza leadership has clearly said that they want to see the state of Israel destroyed. The Hamas leadership is controlling Gaza. And basically, this is a vicious cycle where they fire rockets, it gets unbearable, the IDF responds by going in and attacking the infrastructure, the missile infrastructure, and then they call a ceasefire when they've been really beaten, when Hamas has been beaten enough, then they put their hands up, declare victory, and there's a ceasefire. I like to say that because I lived there during some of these ceasefires, and a ceasefire does not mean that they stop shooting all their rockets. It means it drops from one every hour to one, maybe one a day, one every other day, something like that, which isn't reported on the in Western media at all. And the only reason I know this is because I lived there, and they would go off, and you'd never see it in the Western media.
Okay. Kyle, why don't you Kyle or Dahlia, Kyle, you can go next.
Cow or dog?
All right.
Yeah, Kyle, go ahead.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, hear you fine.
All right. The ceasefire was definitely a trying. The period leading up to the ceasefire was definitely trying. It was difficult to watch. It was difficult to see all of the stories and all of the live tweets coming in from people in Gaza and around the world, everything. And for several days, I was helping raise awareness and spread the information, and making sure everybody I could get in contact with was aware of what's going on. But I think it's unfortunate that the violence has reached that type of boiling point, to the point where it actually did spark off into violence and rocket fire and disproportionate Israeli attacks and absolute chaos. It's very unfortunate, but in order to examine that, we're going to have to get to the root of the problem. And I take great issue with the way Brad framed it as Hamas attacks, and then Israel's forced to retaliate after they've had enough, blah, 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 blah. And it's the usual media narrative of poor Israel, poor victimhood, poor victim Israel. It's always us. We're always the victims. Those Arabs are the bad guys. So it's going to be a process getting to the bottom of things, but
okay.
I guess that's what we're here for, right?
Right. Now, Dahlia, I want you to answer the question next, and then I have the following question I want to pose to you first. So go ahead and answer, and then I'll bring up the second question.
Actually, I have rather a question, because I did not understand the last sentence of what is exactly not shown in Western media from the Israeli side.
Oh, that when there are short-range Qassams hit the outskirts villages on the borders inside Gaza, is not reported majority of the time that it happens. Whereas when they get the warnings that they have to go into their shelters, it doesn't necessarily hit the media.
Okay. And I have another question for him. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead. It's a live dialogue, so go right ahead.
What is actually your personal opinion about it? About the entire issue. Do you see Israel as threatened by Gaza? Do you think to defend yourself?
You're asking my opinion on the situation, just so we're clear?
Yeah.
Well, my opinion is something that I believe Benjamin Netanyahu once said: if the Jews laid down their if the Arabs laid down their arms today, there would be peace tomorrow. If the Jews laid down their arms today, there would be no Israel tomorrow. And it's the truth, because if you look at the peace process going along, you can laugh all you want. Let's see, the Israelis actually turned AK-47s over to the PA. They trained the PA police with the help of the Jordanians. They really have tried to help make Oslo a reality, but the partners in peace have just disappeared.
Okay. So here's where I want to move into. Unless anyone has a direct response, I'd like to go into the next question.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
Just real quick, exactly what I mentioned in the last conversation on Vonvo.
Okay.
It's it's this game go-to slogan of, if the Jews lay down their arms, there would be no more war. Or if the Arabs lay down their arms, there would be no more war.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's you said it's a truthism, but I would put more emphasis on the ism than the truth part, because the matter is that Israel has started every armed conflict in its existence, with the exception of the Yom Kippur War. So,
how about the war
yeah,
of
so that would be a
How-
pretty difficult thing to square.
I'm just, well,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah. How about the ethnic cleansing campaign of the year prior? That's kind of
ethnic
important.
cleansing of campaign of
Context,
what?
sir. Context.
Hold on, wait. What ethnic cleansing? Are you talking about 29 riots in Hebron, where the Arabs went and ethnically cleansed the city? Are you gonna go back that far and start with that?
No, I'm talking about Plan de Let.
Guys, speak
I'm
one at a
talking.
time.
I'm talking.
Speak one at a time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to figure out what you're talking about with this ethnic cleansing.
Kyle, elaborate on your ethnic cleansing.
I'm talking
what is that referring
about
to?
I'm talking about the 130 villages wiped off the map, the 750,000 people who were forced from their homes, the tens of thousands of homes that would.
When, where, what are you talking about? You've thrown around numbers that I don't know where they're coming from. I'm asking you to be more specific. Are you talking from 1900 to 1948, 1948 to 1967, when there was in Arab control, the West Bank and Gaza? Or are we talking since 1967 to the
I'm talking a period of a few short months in the year of 1947. It was a massive ethnic cleansing campaign kicked off by the Haganah and Irgun. It was a joint operation.
ethnic cleansing?
The war of the war of independence, that, as you call it, was Arab neighbors coming to the Palestinian defense.
Let him finish, and then Brad, you'll respond now.
Now, this ethnic cleansing, also known as a war, that the Arabs took up arms against the Israelis. That's usually a war. It was a declaration of independence, and it was something that was granted by the United Nations, a two-state solution, which didn't happen then. Why? Because the Arab neighbors didn't want it. The Israelis had the Jews at that point did not want the
All right, guys.
They would have been happy with what they had.
So Dahlia,
They were attacked.
Dahlia,
I'm really curious.
Dahlia, do you hear everything? Are you hearing everything fine?
I hear everything. Sometimes it's kind of messy because I don't know if somebody is typing here or is it.
No. We want to hear now your take on the situation. So go ahead.
No, actually, I have another question before I continue, because you would just say harm on the Israelis by the Arabs. Can you elaborate on that? Because that will be quite interesting for me to hear.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Really understand on the harm in this sense.
I didn't hear the question. Can you repeat it, please?
You just talked about harm towards the Israelis by the Arabs. This is just what you claimed, right? Can you elaborate on that? On what?
When they picked up arms, you mean when the Arabs had consistently
Harm.
carried out
pogroms
against the Jews between the year 1900 and even until the War of Independence, there were constant pogroms, so to speak.
Okay.
Let's see, in the city of Jerusalem, Jews were banned from carrying weapons, from possessing weapons, where the Arab population was not. In fact, there was a guy named Rehavam Ze'evi who was murdered in, I want to say, the early 2000s, that he was arrested because he had a gun in Jerusalem to protect himself from his Arab neighbors that would shoot at him. And this is this is a normal thing. This isn't anything extraordinary. You have Hebron, where they actually murdered the entire community. It disappeared in the I believe it's 29. There was just blanket murder.
Okay.
Look, I'm not going to say that the Israelis are completely innocent, that they've never done anything wrong. This isn't their goal is to sit there and ethnically cleanse this, whereas the same cannot be said for the Arabs, which openly, let's see, in 1948 called for the destruction of the state of Israel. You have the Hamas leaders now, which openly call for the destruction of Israel. They're not sitting here asking for peace.
Do you, Kyle or Dahlia, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, I would like to respond to that. It's actually quite interesting what you just said about Hebron. I've been to Hebron about maybe 3 weeks ago, and what I have seen there was the complete opposite with my own eyes. And I have to say, I went there objectively not trying to take part in that sense because I'm trying to work as a journalist in this field. Seeing that 400 settlers, because of 400 settlers, people are being terrorized in Hebron. They cannot even cross the street without being terrorized by the soldiers there. They're living in a mattress. You could see blood, fresh blood, on the wall.
Brad, let her finish her point.
On the walls. Let me please. Which were caused by the Israelis. I have seen with my own eyes how an Israeli soldier was kicking a primary school kid who accidentally, he was playing football, his ball was shooting, on the wrong zone of the street. He was trying to get his ball and he was kicked by an Israeli soldier. What kind of defense is that? I do not understand this approach. And then seeing all the stones throwing around, the settlers are the ones who are having the weapons, who can shoot whenever they want, who are throwing stones, garbage, even acid on the Palestinians on a daily basis. And you are talking about that they are the ones who are harmed and cannot defend themselves. I'm really interested in how you came up with that point.
Yeah, so let's let Brad respond to all that, Dahlia, okay?
Wait a second. I'm supposed to lift up my sorry, Brad. Lift up my volume. Okay, go ahead.
There are a number of points that you addressed. First of all, I haven't been there as a soldier. Why are they harassing a little kid? You make it sound like all these little kids are innocent. And I will tell you, I was stationed on
a primary school kid.
Wait. Can you listen to me, please? So please, give me a second. When I was stationed outside Nablus, a 7-year-old kid stabbed one of my friends there. 7 years old. We're not talking an adult. Anyone with a weapon can be dangerous. So these soldiers were putting their life at risk. In your mind, they have no right, when children frequently attack them, to be skeptical of a child's innocence.
Dahlia, what
occupation tends to do that?
Occupation? What is an occupation? An occupation entails that that the land is actually belonged to them. If there was never such thing as Palestinian land, the land you're talking about was Turkish.
Oh, here we go.
Land. Turkish state land.
Oh, here we go.
Turkish state land, right?
Not revisionist history, sir.
This isn't revisionist at all. You're going to tell me the Ottoman Empire didn't control this land.
The Ottoman Empire was gone in 1929.
Brad, can I ask you something?
Dahlia, yeah, go ahead, Dahlia.
Yeah, and the British took over.
Okay, so now the British have control of state land. This is simple. What happens in war? You lose a war, you lose your state territory. They can do with it what they please. They set up 2 countries. Fine. The Jews got
Now
theirs.
that's funny.
Kyle, what part are you interested in? You said something's funny. What part about what Brad was just saying did you want to address?
Specifically the law of the jungle type mentality rather than the law of man of, hey, you lost the war, you lose your land. Sorry, but that's not how the civilized world works, and UN Resolution 242 affirms that. The inadmissibility of land by war, land acquired by war. Cannot do it.
Brad,
it is against international law.
Let him finish. And let him finish.
You cannot do it. It is against international law. And if you do want to make that argument, well then, I guess it would be completely immoral if the United States came in and annexed every inch of Israel, right? It would be totally right, because you would lose the war, and then you'd just, whatever. Is that your argument?
May I bring
I'm actually going to go, my argument has to do with the Geneva Conventions of Warfare, which you're obviously overlooking, because obviously United
Which Israel is in violation of.
Wait. You're making a claim.
Article 49.
You are making it on baseless claims right now. Now let's go back to Geneva Convention of Warfare, and I'm going to quote it for you. The aggressor in any war is subject to losing his territory. Now, you've made the claim that Israel has always been the aggressor, which most people, even liberal, if you go in 1967 or 1956, when there was, and the Egyptians declared war on the state of Israel by closing the Suez Canal. That's a fact. That's called a declaration.
Closing a canal is declaring war?
It's putting a country under siege, yes. When you put a country under siege...
Oh, so you mean like Gaza right now?
Wait, no.
You mean like Gaza right now?
That is an act of war, but you're...
Oh, that's different when Israel does it.
Can you stop and listen? No, you're going to... Let me finish. You're going to say that it is an act of war. But there are constant acts of wars being conducted on the state of Israel, that there is a state of war. This is an action that's done in wartime.
Can I redirect? Well, first off, I found one point just personally interesting that I wanted to bring up, and then I want to go into an interesting point about what can be being done differently throughout these areas. But just one quick thing that I wanted to bring up that I thought was interesting. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I am by no means a historian, and I'm just gonna go strictly off of high school and the history that I learned back then. And I guess I'll raise it to Kyle for the most part. For the most part, when I was in school, I mean, when you think about all the different wars that have gone on, Kyle, I mean, isn't it more so common? Isn't it actuality where a war occurs? I just one point you said before just kind of caught me off guard. When a war occurs, that usually the people that lose that war, are subject to lose a lot of their territory. No, I mean, I don't want to go into the Geneva stuff because I don't really know exactly what the facts are relating to that. But what I basically was just kind of bringing up is that typically over the past 300-400 years, isn't that kind of how that along with the idea of imperialism all kind of works? No.
No, actually, the only way to acquire the only way to acquire territory legally is through purchase or through treaty. And a treaty is usually signed, yes, after you lose a war or you win a war, etc., etc. No such treaty was ever signed. You do not get to kick in somebody's door, beat them up, and say you won the fight and take their house. You just do not get to do it. And it's completely indefensible to argue the opposite.
Well, my question then to
it's
you
just it's as simple as that.
After World War I, was the treaty not signed relinquishing all the territory that was formerly the Ottoman Empire to both British and French control? Are you willing to accept that proposition?
Well, they took it. Well, yeah, they divvied up the land for themselves.
But
they never asked the indigenous people.
Wait. So that was okay. So you're saying legally the British had legal control over it, correct?
Up to a certain point, yes.
They
occupied it.
They
were benevolent occupiers, whereas the Israelis are intransigent occupiers.
Stop. Your second claim, before you can substantiate your latter claims, you need to substantiate your former. Are you saying that the British had legal ownership of this territory? Yes or no?
They had control over it. They certainly had control over it. They certainly had what was viewed as legitimate control over it because they had their military there. They had quite a sizable military there. They were responsible for it. Administered, just as Greta just said in the text chat, they administered it. They did not own it. Ownership always stayed with the Palestinians.
Well, considering the group known as Palestinians wasn't in existence until 1967, I challenge that. But I'm just kind of curious, but I'm not going to bring that up for debate because I think it's a moot point. My question is this. How did it retain... The ownership is retained by the people, yet it is governed by another people, is what you're saying. That had legal justification to ownership of the land. You've just actually contradicted.
They didn't have any legal justification to own. Legal justification for ownership.
You said
possession is 9/10 of the law.
Wait. You said it was.
Do you remember the statement that?
All right, guys.
Or by purchase. That is what you said. Now you've agreed that through treaty.
I don't recall
British.
All the Palestinians ever signed a treaty with the British.
Well, the Palestinians never had any type of governmental rule over this territory. There wasn't any.
Is that...
And you're claiming that there was...
You mean one that you like.
No. You have not even addressed the question I just had. name me any type of political body that was, quote, Palestinian that ruled this land. Ever.
Right.
Ever.
So
legitimate, illegitimate, I don't care. Name me a legal body that was there, other than Yasser Arafat. Before Yasser Arafat, there was nothing.
Okay. I mean, unless one of you guys had.
If what you think, whatever.
I'm asking you to prove me wrong. You're gonna say, oh, whatever, yeah, oh, yeah. Well, give me a solid fact. You're claiming that I'm wrong. So I'm asking you.
Dahlia, do you know who, Dahlia or Kyle, do you know what was their ruling party back then? And then, I mean, if you just want to kind of answer that question, and I want to move the conversation to something past history. Like, I want to move it to the present.
I think we should rather talk about the current issues.
All right,
now.
all right. So then let's yeah. Instead
what belongs to who and so on.
But just for posterity. Yeah. They were a largely agrarian people. They were very self-sufficient.
Okay.
And they didn't have, quote, international relations with other countries.
Okay.
Because they didn't need to. They minded their own business. They never bothered anybody.
They were part of the Ottoman Empire, controlled by an Ottoman.
Brad. I want to move into present day. I want the Kyle just leave that with what it was. And okay, thank you for that. So here's what I want to move into next, and I want to bring it up to Dahlia first because she has lived there for many years of her life, and then Brad, I want you to take the question next. So Dahlia, and then Kyle, you'll kind of just come in third. All right. Dahlia, what right in regards to the current occupations going on inside of West Bank and Gaza? Where did you live exactly? Were you in Gaza or in West Bank when you used to live in Palestinian land?
I didn't live there. My family lived there. I was there a couple of times. I have been there now to observe the situation and talk to people. And my family is from Geneva.
Okay, so from what you hear from those people inside those lands, what do they wish would change based on that occupation? What is going on that they cannot, they just can't despise? They despise.
Actually, they have quite a lot of.
Could you name a few? Could you name a few points, and then we'll have Brad kind of respond to them?
Okay. First of all, it is simple human rights. There are no human rights in Palestine. I heard about it before. I haven't been there for a while before. I just I've been there now the last few weeks, and I observed it with my own eyes. It is not possible to express your opinion about Israel in an open manner, in a political manner, without having, being in danger of being imprisoned. This is one point. I've talked to a couple of youngsters who would like to, express their feeling about it without hatred, just on an authentic political basis, which is not possible. And the checkpoint itself makes it hardly possible to live there. You cannot go from point A to B without being really, and this is really true. I saw it with my own eyes, humiliated at the checkpoints day by day. Families, mothers, young students who just want to check the checkpoint just to go to school, they are being humiliated on a really, really big extent. So this is just like simple things. They just want to be treated like normal people. They feel like secondary people. The apartheid makes it really hard for them to live, to feel respected. So all they want is simple human rights. Just a modest request, that's all. That's what I could require from there. And I didn't hear any hatred from the youngsters. I didn't hear any hateful words. What they said to me, that they are ready to share their country, to share their home with their so-called neighbors, which are the Israelis. But they just don't want to be treated as secondary people.
Okay, so Brad, did you get all of that for the most part? And
yeah, I was taking notes specifically for that.
Okay, go ahead. So why don't you respond to that?
My first response is actually I agree with. Hold on, wait. No, I just want to make all your points down so I can actually address them all. I actually do agree with you. On my time there, I will admit that I don't think there is much aggression from the younger as much aggression today from the younger generation towards the Israelis as there was, let's say, 10 or 15 years ago during the Intifadas. And I do agree with you on that. I think that God willing, in our lifetime, we will see both sides sit down and actually strive towards peace. I do want to address the issues one by one. You start out with human rights. It's a confusing point. Whenever someone brings this up, I'm a philosophy major. I really find the argument bogs down to almost nonsense. The most basic human rights are life, liberty, and property. These Palestinians are not being deprived of their lives. They're not being hunted down and killed on a daily basis. Their liberties, that is, they're not being told what, inside their own territory, they're not being told what to do. In Jenin, they have a problem going visiting someone at night if they wanted to.
Oh,
No.
but in Jenin, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
Go ahead, Dahlia.
I just want to give a short example, then you can continue. I'm sorry for interrupting, but in Jenin, actually, that night I was there. Somebody expressed his point, a young boy, and he was picked up the same night. I was there. He was picked up by the Israeli military, and he was imprisoned for that. So
I'm just curious, since
Facebook,
you're
just
going to
because
bring that
of
up,
Facebook activities.
how did the Israeli military find him? If he just spoke out that day?
Well,
do you know how that works?
You know how they found them. maybe you know better than I how they found them.
I know exactly how they do it. They rat on each other. They go to the way the Israeli army gets intelligence on what's going on in those territories is from other people in those territories. So their own people think that they are threats and are turning them in. I agree with you that that's sometimes wrong and it's sometimes off base. And it's actually, a lot of times it's done like that. But anyway.
It is not, it's not relevant how they found him. If somebody, told out on him from the Palestinian side, could be, I don't know. It's about the fact that he was simply just expressing his political views, not on a radical basis, on a social platform. And suddenly he was claimed to do some terrorist activities. I asked myself how a 17-year-old boy can be claimed for that, And this is just a little example that I experienced with my own eyes, and I was wondering, how can this be justified? How can this be a human right if you are scared?
So
and they are literally scared.
I have an interesting question to throw at Brad based on your personal story that you're bringing up. Brad, knowing that you were an IDF soldier, you were on those same borders, and for all you know, not that it was, but it could, you could have been in that exact same place where you were arresting this 17-year-old kid. Knowing that there are a lot of younger children or whatever, kids my age, 23, whatever it is, knowing that there are a lot of kids that, let's say, will get arrested, for, let's say, just speaking up. How does that, make you as well as other Israeli soldiers feel, knowing that, like, they could be totally innocent for all you know a few days later, but they got arrested for really potentially no reason whatsoever?
I think it's a gray area. I think it's very hard, especially with this one, to really take a stance. And I'll tell you why. On the one hand, it has been proven since they've been doing this running the intelligence we've been doing it, there have been significantly fewer suicide bombers. But again, I think this is irrelevant. I think it's bad. I think sometimes they go a little far, and sometimes they go out and arrest people. Like she said, the people who are giving us good intelligence, we used to arrest them too, because it had to look like they were being picked up. Otherwise, they'd be killed by their own people. But I want to get back to Dahlia's original points here. The speaking out, we got that, and human rights. I still don't understand what human rights violations. I actually heard someone saying that you have a human right to own weapons, which I think is utter nonsense. You can say freedom of speech.
This is not a point. I was talking about weapons.
You did mention there's zero. You said there are no human rights.
From being able to go from A to B, for example. I met a taxi driver whose wife was living in Jerusalem. They could not live together because she could not live in Ramallah, otherwise she would lose her passport. And he could not live in Jerusalem. So their marriage was based on a long distance relationship in which they could see each other every 2 weeks when she would cross the border. Cross the border, you say border in this context, checkpoint, and he would cook them.
Actually, I think your your original assessment of that is the proper one. It's a border. When you cross from Zone C into A and B, it's an international border. Why? Wait. I know you live in.
If I could jump in for a moment.
Yeah. Let's let Kyle. Let's let Kyle into this segment.
All right, Brad. You said that fundamental human rights are life, liberty, and property. That's fairly universal. It's enshrined in the U.S. Declaration of Independence, etc., etc. I am willing to concede that in the West Bank, not in Gaza, but in the West Bank, you have a point. People aren't being hunted down and murdered like animals. Not often, I should say, but it does happen. There are senseless and random killings.
I think it's done on both sides.
Liberty.
I think it's done on both sides. And I agree with you. I think that
check the proportionality.
I don't think there is.
The proportionality is what matters. But allow me to continue. Regarding the second point, liberty. Palestinians, they're not governed under civil law. They're governed under military law because it's a military occupation.
It is.
And the conviction rate for Palestinians...
Brad, let him finish.
Let me finish my point.
I would like to hear Kyle's point to the end, if it's possible, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
First of all, the fact that they are governed under military law is proof positive, undeniable proof that they are under a military occupation. But the conviction rate for those Palestinians is 99.74%. You have any idea how ridiculous that is? That's 26 acquittals out of 8,854. In 2010, 99.74% of trials of Palestinians in Israeli military courts ended in convictions. This is for the innocuous crime of threatening soldiers' lives by throwing rocks at tanks. You know those magic exploding rocks. Rocks at tanks, yes.
That's the thing. It's never had a person. Do you know how a rock...
You mean those people who shouldn't be there in the first place?
Wait, no, that's your opinion. That's not a fact. You're going to say
no, that's a fact. You do not have a right.
Guys, one at a time. Kyle, you just got in.
You do not have
the state of Israel has no right to self-defense, in your opinion.
No, the state of Israel has no right to occupation.
Self-defense. No.
Defense is not offense.
Whoa.
How do you...
Really?
How do you define self-defense?
All right,
I just showed you how... I just showed you that there is.
No,
I just showed you 99.74%.
Wait. Time out. You stated that it's under military occupation. What's the PA? The PA has no laws? The PA has no laws. They don't have a police.
The PA is a...
They don't have anything. They don't have their own areas that they control.
The PA is a... And they take and they're back burner to the Israeli military.
Wait. I have an important question. I have an important question here. Important question. Whose fault is it? Are we all there? Are we all there?
Yeah, we're there.
Okay, whose fault? Brad's bringing up the PA, and he's saying, they have this, they have that. And then it sounded like, Kyle, you were going to go against Brad's thought and say, they're just a small little group. Whose fault is it that, let's say, they aren't a large enough authoritarian force to control their people? Whose fault is it?
Well, the PA is widely known across the entire Arab world as an Israeli puppet government. Mahmoud Abbas bends over for Israel every
Brad, let him finish.
Wait.
Brad, let him finish.
Of course they're the government.
So then they're the occupiers.
Of course, Brad. Of course they're the government.
The Palestinians.
No, they're not. They're the elected government of...
No. If they're the government of the
I can't talk with this guy over...
Brad, you really gotta go.
Let me know when you're finished, Brad.
I just want to
get it off your chest. Go ahead.
Question: if the PA is the government,
okay,
is the sovereign over these people, then they are the occupiers. Occupier is who has sovereign control over the area. It is blatantly clear that you're going to say, "Oh, it's a puppet government," but it's a government. It is oppressing its people. So your belief is that it should be overthrown. Then you should get rid of the PA. So who's going to control these people? Who's gonna
You
be the
are
sovereign
really,
government?
really confused.
Tell
Let me see if I can use slur words for
Kyle,
you,
Kyle,
because
tell
this is
him,
really annoying.
Kyle, go ahead.
Military occupation. Military occupation is when soldiers to enforce edicts from a foreign country on another people. If the U.S. invaded Mexico City and sent U.S. Marines there to enforce martial law, as the West Bank is under,
No, it's not.
military law, military law. That's
Brad,
called
Brad,
martial
let him,
law.
Brad, let him, Brad, you gotta let each person say their point.
It's
That's
a
what
fallacy.
That's what it is.
No.
No, that's not a fallacy.
Martial-
That's what it
martial
is. You're
law
trying to
means
make
the gov-
excuses.
wait.
Anyway,
Martial law is when a military officer has complete control over something and he sets the law. That is not what goes on there.
that's exactly
Really?
what
Name
the
me the
West Bank
officer.
is.
You want to what? Give me the name of one officer that sets the law in the West Bank. If you're going to say that, one officer. The name of one officer.
It's whatever they say. It's whatever they say it is.
Give me the name of an officer.
They make it up as they go
that
along.
is given an edict that is a law there. You're claiming there's martial law. Give me the name. Name.
I could just
not
give your
ambiguity.
name.
Give me one name. And
I
the
could
law
give
that went
your
over
name.
with it.
Brad L. Brad
I
L.
wasn't an
Because
officer.
when
I wasn't an officer.
I don't care if you're an officer.
Well, then I'm not.
I don't care if you're a low-level grunt. You're walking around with guns on other people's property and bossing them around. That makes you an occupier. That makes you the bully. You are the one in the wrong here.
Guys,
Hold on. Stop. If you're going to call me an occupier, you have to prove to me that the land belonged to someone else legally. Now, we've gotten back to this conversation. You've already accepted that the British had sovereign control over it, and they made a treaty giving half of it to the Jews, half to the Arabs. 1967 is pretty much blatantly, that war is considered a war of self-defense, where the Israelis were not considered the aggressor.
That Israel started.
The defense. Do you know how the 60s first shots? Who fired the first shots of the '67 war?
I certainly do. It was Israel in a sneak attack on
Really?
the Egyptian Air Force.
That's-
Yitzhak Rabin said so himself.
Yitzhak Rabin said so himself. Maybe you should
In
read
the
Michael
French
Oren.
newspaper Le Monde in
Maybe you
1967.
should do your research. There's a book that Michael Oren put out.
I've
that
done
actually
more research
documents-
than that.
Maybe you should. Just let me finish. Michael Oren,
Right.
he wrote a book documenting the history of this. Okay? Now,
I don't think Michael Oren can read, let alone write a book.
he's got a PhD from Princeton.
Wholly
so I think
unqualified to make this.
Really, PhD from Princeton actually probably makes him more qualified.
Okay,
than
guys,
you.
can I get?
But I won't sit on this. I think he's a good historian. The first bullets flew.
No, he's not.
Right? Do you know where Kisufim is? Ever heard of it? Do you know where Gaza City is?
I know where Gaza is.
Okay, well, the Egyptian soldiers fired upon Israelis over the border 3 days prior to that sneak attack, the preemptive strike that the Israelis did. They fired the first bullets of the war on Israeli paratroopers who were
Completely unsubstantiated from an Israeli source with
Actually, from
absolutely
an
no
Egyptian
physical
source.
evidence.
Guys, can we get? I want to. Dahlia, do you have anything to throw in here? Otherwise, I want to move into another, more current, a topic more, related to the current day. Do you have anything that you want to throw in on top of what they've been saying?
I wanted to ask Brad something. I mean, first of all, actually, Brad, I was really looking forward to have this conversation with you. For me, it's really important to talk to the other side. And I would always go up to soldiers and try to have some conversations with them. But I think, you should regulate your temper a little bit. It's a little bit hard to follow you without feeling a little bit attacked. So maybe just try to, regulate that a little bit. Otherwise, it's
feeling a little outnumbered here. I'm 2-1.
No, it's not that. Look, it's not about that. It's just
This is Dahlia's show. I'm just watching.
You're just watching?
Coming over a little bit unprofessional. Let's just try to be a little bit more, Okay, cool?
Okay.
Cool? Yeah? Okay, awesome.
All right.
Okay, I wanted to ask you something. So,
Shoot.
okay, cool. So I have been to Bethlehem and I met a woman. She told me a really interesting story. Actually, she is speaking now for some, I think for CNN. next week. She told me she was invited for an interview. She went to the States now for an interview there. She lives in Bethlehem, and her house basically is in the middle of the wall. So when they started building the wall, they started to build it around her house. And the worst thing is they used her house as a military point. So one night they just came in their house. Those soldiers broke in their house, pulled out her little children, threatened them with their weapons. And for the next 4 years, they used it as a military point. They went in and out of the house. You have to imagine somebody walks in your house, your kitchen, your sleeping room, at any time they want with weapons, which is actually your enemy, not, in this sense, in order to shoot at your neighbors. What is your opinion? How would you justify that? Yeah. The little boy, I talked to her little boy, he's only 15 years old, highly traumatized because he had to see how they shot his friend from his house, and his friend was just walking on the street doing nothing, and he had to see it. And I just want to know, what is your opinion about it? How do you justify that?
I think it's tragic. From the story you just said,
why is that legal? How is it legal my question is, how is it legal, in your point of view, to use a random house as a military point of family and to terrorize them for the next 4 years? How is that legal?
Go ahead, Brad.
How is that acceptable? You cannot. I'm really curious.
I think I think the situation you just described is very tragic. And if it does happen, again, I've never seen any substantiated evidence has happened. I'm not saying you're wrong. I haven't seen anything. And something like that happen, it's probably not something that's very justifiable. But if you're saying that it was built on a fence, which is put there for self-defense, I understand it. I still don't think it's completely right. However, I don't see another option. I really
why is it completely right? How is this right?
You missed what I said.
I didn't hear you.
I said it's tragic.
Okay.
It's probably not something that should be taking place. They should probably
okay. I'm sorry.
Pillboxes on the other side of the fence. From what you're saying, I think you would agree that if they were building a pillbox on the other side, that would be okay. Correct?
Okay. All right.
So I think there is a problem with it, and I think there was some temporary things done. And I don't think that either side is perfect in this, and I don't try to assume that one side is right and one side is wrong. I think it's war, and I think in war, both sides do stuff. And in any war, there are always things that happen that are regrettable, done by both sides. The question is really how can it
What I don't understand, Brad, is how you're saying that both sides have done wrong, but I have yet to see you acknowledge not a single solitary wrongdoing on the part of the Israel Defense Forces. Not one.
Were you not listening to what I just
From the
said?
wars that they've started to the military occupation.
Brad, there's someone in the text. There's someone. I want to hear your answer to. I can't
see the text, by the way.
You can't see the text?
No, I'm not seeing any of the text on the bottom.
Really? Can you tell me what browser you have quickly so I can mark that bug down? Thank you.
Internet Explorer. I haven't been seeing it all along. I actually said this earlier.
What version?
You have to give me a minute here.
Sorry, guys, we're taking a
Internet Explorer. That's your first problem.
Version 9.0.8.112.16.421.
9.0.8. Okay.
Updated version.
Okay, so Brad, I want to hear. Can you give a quick response to Kyle's point about what do you think the Israeli Defense Force does do wrong currently? Like, what can you acknowledge from being there that they do wrong? And then there was a person that asked in the text chat. They asked, what did they ask? They asked, why did you go to serve in the Israeli Defense Forces and not in the U.S. military? Can you answer both of those? Can you address both of those points?
Sure. Just the first. What was the first one? Which one do you?
A viewer, you could address the first one. A viewer asked, why did you think it was right to serve in the Israeli Defense Force and not the U.S. military? And then you could address Kyle's point.
Sure. I think actually that I can address them both almost simultaneously. One, for Kyle's point, it has to do with you're asking me why I don't think that the Israeli army does stuff wrong. Just having been there and having served and gotten orders and knowing as a soldier that you're supposed to question those orders. This is the American army. You actually go in there, they give you orders, and you decide whether it's right or wrong. They give you a full picture. They don't give you just a mission. Say go kill people or go arrest people. They give you everything. To answer the viewer's question there, I went to serve because I felt that service to the country is important. They do a lot of good for the world, and to deny that to lunacy, in my opinion. Someone's got to defend it. My father was actually an officer in the United States military, and as a religious Jew, he learned that it is very hard to be a religious Jew in the United States Army. So I decided that if I was going to serve, there was only one place to serve.
Okay, and now, Brad, could you point out a few things, because I think it's interesting to to transition into the next phase of the conversation. And I mean, Dahlia, I know you drank some coffee before, so I don't know if you're ready to keep going or not. But if you guys want to continue speaking, I'm more than fine with it. We're coming up on almost an hour in a little while. But do you guys want to continue for a little while longer?
Yeah, I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So, Brad, what I want to bring up, I want to transition this conversation into, once again, things current day, and I want to start maybe pushing this towards a solutions-oriented conversation. What I was first going to bring up for you is, what specific things after your service in the Israeli army do you think they do, inappropriately? What things should they be changing? Did you see any flaws in the system that you think would maybe better the Palestinian people potentially?
Can I ask for a mild clarification when we're talking about the Palestine? Are we talking about the people in the West Bank or the people in Gaza? Because I think they're two different entities. You discuss it.
Yeah. I mean, I get
they're the same entity.
I would argue that politically that they don't align, and culturally, I don't think they're the same people.
Okay, why don't you address? If you can try and address both of them as a whole, that would be great. But if you have to break them down, then go ahead.
With regards to Gaza, I really don't think that there is anything that we can do to change it.
What's the main reason is that is because that's where weapons get smuggled primarily?
Well, I'll start a little bit of history that with the disengagement in 2000, the whole concept of that was let's pull out of the territory, give them sovereign control, and then no one can say anything that we're the occupiers because, frankly, if you don't have a military, as Kyle liked to say, an occupation entails soldiers of one country and then basically being inside another country and governing it, correct?
Yeah.
As a disengagement.
Partially.
But so I got the gist, right, Kyle?
But you also have a double standard in play there.
No, wait. I'm not trying to stand. I'm trying to figure out what you said. I'm trying to quantify it. And when they pull out of that area, they have no military presence inside of Gaza. They are their own sovereign ruling state, and yet they continue to smuggle
That's not
weapons
necessarily
in.
true.
Why is that not necessarily true?
Are we?
Have you never heard of the buffer zone?
It's a 300.
Blocking farmers from tilling their field.
Wait. Are you talking about the 300 meters between the border into Gaza, the no man's land? Is that what you're talking about?
Which is all in Gaza and none in Israel. Yes.
Actually, there's also a 300-yard in Israel, but I wouldn't expect you to know that. There's on both sides of the fence the DMZ.
You could lose the attitude, please. Thank you.
I'd lose it if you're making claims that weren't unsubstantiated. And
okay, Dahlia, what things? Being that you have family over there, what things do your family say need to change in order for them to have a better life? In those areas.
Well, the occupation has to disappear in order to change their life quality. This is what my family says, and this is also what everybody else says. No one wants to kick anyone out of the country. We are aware of the fact that this is not possible anymore, even though there are some people who would, come up with those arguments. But let's put them aside, okay? I also this is not possible right now. But let's talk about the fact that no one wants to kick out anyone. Just living honestly, talking with idealistic words, living in peace next to each other. This is what they want. They just want to have the possibility to live like a human being without any restrictions, without all those restrictions that they have caused by the occupation. This is all.
Right.
Idealistically speaking, right now.
Right now, Kyle, what specific things do you think drastically have to change in order for there to be a peaceful living situation? And I mean, then we'll take your answer and go directly into how we actually maybe come to that point. What maybe are the options there?
Well, I can sum it up with 3 points.
Okay, go ahead.
First and foremost, the occupation first has edged that it is real, and it is real to everybody on Earth. Eyes to see, ears to hear, and it needs to be stopped immediately. Bar none, no preconditions. The occupation has to stop. Every Israeli settlement, every Israeli soldier must go. Number 2.
Wait,
Israel
Brad, you gotta let him speak.
No, let me finish. Number 2, Israel has a very important choice to make. Does it want to be the Jewish state, or does it want to be a democratic state? Because the two are not synonymous. You cannot be an ethnic state and claim to be a democracy as well. Part of the conditions for the creation of the state of Israel was that it would be egalitarian. It would be open. It would treat people the same, regardless of gender, religion, ethnicity, etc., etc. That's clearly not the case today, with over 40 racist laws specifically targeting Palestinians in Israel proper, and the military occupation, military in the West Bank. And third, it's a generational problem. This is not going to the next 5 years. This is going to take generations to solve. It's going to take generations of Israelis who stop teaching their kids that Arabs are evil who want to push them into the sea. And it's going to take Palestinians generations to teach their children that, yeah, these guys screwed us royally, but we can't hate them for it. We need to accept past as what has happened and try to make amends and move forward.
Okay, so Brad, go ahead. Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
The paramount point I want to make, the paramount point that I want to make is that people need to understand that disproportionality of power here, the imbalance of power. When you have an occupied people who are insecure for water, whose aquifers are being tapped, water is being stolen, these people are trying to drink out of dry taps, while settlers 100 yards away are filling their swimming pools. There's something profoundly wrong there. When 80% of the population of Gaza.
Kyle, let's let Brad.
I want to see the proof. I really want to see the proof. That's utter nonsense, and I really don't. I think it's defamatory almost.
It sounds like Dahlia might have a story or some proof. Go ahead, Dahlia.
No, I mean, you're talking about the water resources right now, as far as I could hear.
Yes.
They were always interrupted.
Go ahead.
Yeah. There are differences, but from what he just said, it's a drastic. I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen. I'm not disagreeing with you. My point is, we over-exaggerated to the point to make it seem like they're getting zero water and the Jews have an abundance of water, which I just think it's a little ridiculous.
Brad, let's let Dahlia. Dahlia, go ahead.
I'm really sorry to break it down to you that way, but it is actually not exaggerated as you call it. It is true. I've seen it with my own eyes. The farmers cannot water. My English is not that perfect because I'm from Germany. How do you say it? Plantage? In English?
What, irrigate? Irrigate?
That's right.
irrigation.
Exactly. It's the economical situation is really bad for them because their olive trees are dying on a regular basis because they do not have the water resources. And talking from own experiences, I mean, I have been just there. Simple things for people like showering is quite hard in Palestine because at some point of the day, there is no water at all. So you just have to, just be ready for certain times of the day that I wasn't aware of because I don't live there where the Israelis, release the water. So actually, that's not quite fair because I think you could shower at any time of the day, right? So this is just a simple example right now. So there is a big difference, definitely a big difference. I've been to Tel Aviv. I saw the amazing water use there, and for what superficial, things they were used in comparison to the Palestinians. Just need the basic water resources just to live,
Does this have to do with the lack of infrastructure being built with the millions of dollars being given to the PA every year? Now, I'm agreeing with Kyle that the PA government is corrupt here, and that they're given millions upon millions of dollars a year to enhance these irrigation and all this water to really resolve these water problems that isn't being used for it.
Okay,
I agree that's a problem.
The problem isn't infrastructure. The problem is allocation of resources.
So Kyle, is there blame though to be put on behalf of the Palestinian authorities as well as obviously the Israeli authorities? I'm sure you're gonna think that there's plenty of blame to put there, but is there also blame to be put on Palestinian authorities for that?
Of course, they're like wet noodles. They have absolutely no constitution whatsoever. They have no integrity. They are not standing up for what is right. They're not demanding their rights.
Okay.
The most important thing that Mahmoud Abbas has done is go to the UN and try to seek observer status at the General Assembly. And for what it's worth, right? But what's he doing on the ground? What is he actually doing to try to enhance the lives of Palestinians? He's not helping.
Right. So I have an interesting question to pose towards the two of you, or all three of you. I've spoken to a variety of Palestinians so far. There's this one specific individual girl that I've been speaking to that, her stories are just crazy to listen to. And then I participate in these different Vonvos, and I hear there's these extreme parties on the Israeli side and on the Palestinian side. And so I kind of want to ask you guys this question. You're bringing up right now that there are plenty of innocent civilian Palestinian people that, are fed up and not happy with, the lack of respect they're receiving from both the Israeli authorities and the Palestinian authorities. So the question I'm going to ask you is ultimately this crisis, can it be rooted to the fact that it's just these small minority radical groups on each side, just not treating these people fairly ultimately? Is that a valid question? And who wants to, and when I say, there are the radical right-wing Israeli political groups and there's the Hamas, which, people consider radical Palestinian groups. So is it these small minority groups that are just misrepresenting their people? And can one of you guys address that? Maybe Dahlia, do you want to address that first?
No, go ahead. Somebody else can go.
The only thing I want to address is that when it comes to Hamas, saying they're supposedly a bad group is kind of stretching the truth a little bit. It's this group that calls in their charter for the destruction of the state of Israel. It's been consistently claimed as the United States of America are one of its terrorist groups, which is why they don't get any funding in the Gaza Strip from the United States, because the government is considered a terrorist organization.
I'll take a stab at it as well. The problem is that on both sides, the extremists get elected. They don't get marginalized. People want to complain about Hamas being extremists and violent and etc., let's not forget that they were created as a group for studying the Quran. They were not a militant group. They were not a violent group. They were a religious group just meant to improving Muslims' deen. That's all it was. And it was Israel in the late 80s who began funneling arms to them, financing as an alternative to the PLO to destabilize Palestinian politics. That's something that needs to be addressed, as well as the fact that the current Israeli government, the Likud, are made up of the most right-wing psychopaths in Western history. And it was founded by terrorists such as Yitzhak Rabin and and various others, but the point remains that the extremists get elected.
Brad, you gotta let
Hold
him
on,
finish.
you'll get your chance. You'll get your chance.
Brad, let him finish.
Defamation of character. Before you sit there and you call someone a terrorist, you need to understand what a terrorist is. You're calling a man who's defended his country a terrorist. I just want you to understand his goal, Rabin, in his
I'm calling a man who bombed buses and personally led massacres. Personally led massacres.
Yitzhak Rabin.
Yes.
You, my
in the
friend,
Palmach.
are completely and utterly uninformed in this regard because Yitzhak Rabin is the last person that you can accuse this stuff of.
Okay, Kyle, were there any other points?
The Menachem Begin.
Begin, you might have a point with. There are certain guys you can actually might be able to label as a terrorist. Rabin is not one of them.
Okay.
Kyle, were there any other
terrorist? Is anybody who kills people? Yes, Max.
Were there any?
No, a terrorist is not someone who kills someone. A terrorist is simply someone whose objective is to cause terror in their opponent. That is what a terrorist is. A terrorist isn't a killer.
So every Israeli soldier. Gotcha.
No. Wait. What are they called? They're the Israeli Defense Force. They're there to protect people. And do you know, Dahlia mentioned, what's it called again? Hebron in the beginning. Do you know what the soldiers there basically do? I happen to say that. Do you know why they don't want them rusting alive? Yeah, they're worried about the settlers.
Protecting settlers.
No, they're there protecting the Arab population from the settlers. Those settlers are nuts. And I'm going to say that. They're nuts. The army has to be there to defend.
Well, no doubt about that.
They defend the Palestinian people from those settlers. Because if the army wasn't there,
they don't do a very good job.
Oh, yes, they do.
They don't do a very good job.
Trust me, if they weren't there,
anyway,
there would be no Arab population in Hebron. Those settlers are that crazy.
So if we can,
That's not exactly a win for Israel.
No, but you're saying that they're all terrorists. Their goal is to strike terror into their opponent. No, they're sitting there protecting the people that you're.
It's well known that It is well known. Hold on.
Brad.
It is well known that the right-wing government of Israel, especially in Benjamin Netanyahu, would love nothing more to see as few Arabs as possible and as many Jews as possible in Israel and in the West Bank and in Gaza. That's been the stated policy of Netanyahu for decades.
And Netanyahu
Dahlia, you're up next.
Wants to see the creation of a Palestinian state. So what are you saying? So he's changed his policy lately, and you refuse to accept it. No, he's got to still continue on the same thing. Kind of like, so he should never have accepted Arafat because he was a known terrorist, and then he decided he was putting down his arms and going to come to the negotiating table. He changed his position, but you still shouldn't trust him.
Dahlia, weigh in here. Dahlia, come in, talk.
Hi. Well, actually, I'm going back to the whole Hebron issue. I'm sorry to go back there because, Brad, you were mentioning that the soldiers were attacking the entire. I mean, I have to agree with you that the settlers are nuts. Okay, how many soldiers are there? I think around 100,000. I think almost.
How many?
Right? It's quite.
How many?
I was told around 100,000, but I'm not sure. This is just what I was told. Settlers, and they were, I don't know, but this is just
There's
something I don't
200,000
know.
settlers?
Well,
Kyle, how
Yeah,
are we moving 200,000 people out of there?
200,000 Palestinians and 400 settlers.
What's that?
How do
400
you
settlers.
expect to move half a million
200,000.
people? I want to get back to your earlier thing. Where
Same
you
way.
said the occupation
Same way they came
As
in.
I said, I'm not sure about the number. Let's
That's a
not.
logistical nightmare. You can't do it.
okay,
Okay.
You're
Well,
talking
think
about
this way. The way I'm.
yeah, guys, one at a time, Kyle.
Doesn't matter. It's not the point. It's not the point. The number's not the point. As I said, it was just something. I haven't done research about it yet. I will look it up later, and then we can talk about it. The question is just, I have not seen any protections for the Palestinians, because as far as I know, the settlers, they can protect themselves with weapons, for example. And as you said, you called them nuts. They can get quite aggressive easily, very easily. If they start shooting for no reasons at some point because they feel threatened. And the soldiers are not allowed to interfere when they are starting to shoot Palestinians. Actually, a police has to be called in this issue. Until then, everybody else is bad,
I want to ask, guys.
That was actually. I'm not so sure
Guys,
about that. I think it's
guys, I want to ask
allowed to intervene.
Kyle and Dahlia. I want to ask you an interesting, personal question that I think relates directly to what we're talking about. Brad was a soldier in the Israeli army. Okay, if Brad is saying to you that from what he was instructed and from what his friends were instructed by the Israeli army to be protecting those Palestinian people from from those settlers, are you guys just not believing him that those were his instructions, or do you think they just aren't doing a very good job of it? Can you clarify? Do you believe that they are actually getting those instructions? Because he was actually in the army, so he's not going to lie, I don't think, and tell you that that's not.
Well, I don't know if you are, I'm not going to say that he is lying, or I can imagine that. I have no idea who instructed you to do what, or what the exactly words were, but what I have seen with my own eyes was the opposite. It was just the protection for the 400 settlers, and everybody else, I'm sorry, I'm putting it that way, this basically in fear and in terror. Just a few days ago, a deaf guy, I think he just turned 17, it was his 17th or 18th birthday, he has been shot in Hebron. I do not see any justification for that. He was not a threat, not a terrorist, or didn't have any violent intentions. So I do not
bring up stories like that. I think they actually work to the detriment of the argument, because you don't know, as you just said, you don't know the circumstances. I can't render an opinion whether it was justified or unjustified. You're saying you can't see how it's justified, but you don't know any of the circumstances behind it.
Well,
I think even mentioning it's silly because we can't really deliberate. We don't know what happened. And unless you have all the facts in front of you, you can say, oh, man, it was a kid.
Kyle, I have a question for you. Brad brought up, and tell me how you guys think that this should be interpreted on both sides. And by the way, I think this discussion is awesome. So I think you guys are all doing a great job, by the way. What I wanted to throw out there was, Kyle, Brad brought up a story before about a 7-year-old boy who stabbed an Israeli soldier, right? And if you hear a story like that, do you kind of, Brad's bringing up the whole idea behind justification. Do you think that there are clearly stories out there that do give Israeli soldiers a right to think twice about anyone walking by them potentially, and potentially just a small little kid? He said that he has a personal story of a friend that it happened to. So what's your take on when you hear something like that?
Well, there's a two-pronged thing there. To answer your previous question about whether I think Brad is not or whatever, I don't know. I don't know Brad. I don't know who he is. I don't know his character. I don't know anything about him other than the fact that he joined a foreign army instead of the U.S.
I'm also a Israeli citizen, but so it's not a foreign army.
But to answer the second part, I don't know. Let me collect thoughts for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to rephrase the question?
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. We're talking about what's justifiable, and
May I say something?
yeah. Go ahead, Dahlia.
Is it okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
We were talking about the 7-year-old kid that stabbed an Israeli. Actually, if you have any sources about that, I would be highly interested to read about that. First of all,
Yeah.
I mean, a link would be nice.
I'm
But
looking
then I
it
have
up
another. Yeah, that's the thing. And then I have another question. Actually, I was just visiting my Israeli friends, also Jewish Israeli friends, and I would ask them how things were influencing them in their childhood, how they were being brainwashed in their childhood in order to hate Arabs, and how they justified, how their parents justified the whole situation to kill Arabs. And then my Israeli friend, actually, he showed me a very interesting video. It was a YouTube clip, maybe I can post it later on, about Israeli children, really little, small, cute children who would go on a military fair, and they would be, they would get all this introductions to the military, and they were even interviewed, what do you want to do later? And they would answer, those cute, innocent kids would answer with kill Arabs. So you said it was justified. I don't know what you did, what exactly happened to the 7-year-old kid, but you just, try to justify the situation that I was talking about earlier, that the little kid who was kicked by the Israeli because he left his ball in the wrong street zone. You said, okay, it is justified by the fact that there was a 7-year-old kid once stabbing, etc. But then we could also, basically, which I am not supporting at all, but we could also come with the argument, okay, then we can still missiles at Israeli children because they are getting military education from little on. They are getting all, they will already want to kill Arabs in the early age. They are a threat for us as well. So I find this argument so. I don't want to be insulting here, but it's so low to talk in such a perspective about a child, This is that's what I want to know from you. How would you justify on the other side? How they, that they get brainwashed?
Yeah.
If I might.
Yeah.
If I might answer.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking that we're missing the bigger picture here.
Okay.
The bigger picture is, if Israeli soldiers are that concerned about 7-year-old children trying to stab them, perhaps the priorities are a little out of whack, and they should be why a 7-year-old would want to stab them.
I can answer that question.
Could it possibly be?
Would you like to answer?
Brad, you'll respond in a minute.
And when I'm finished, could it possibly be the fact that Shuhada Street in Hebron is completely blocked off to Palestinians? Only Jews can use it? Could it possibly be people being forced out of their homes demolished because they're illegal, even though they predate the state of Israel? Could it be any of these things? I think it could. And I think it could be being forced to live in poverty. I think it could be a whole plethora of other things that those children see those Israeli soldiers as directly liable for, because they are the ones who are defending and enforcing this way of life upon them.
Okay, so
what you have to understand,
okay, keep going. Sorry,
is that the Palestinians never asked for this. They did not ask for this. They did ask to be invaded. They did not ask to be colonized, and they did not ask for the Jewish majority.
All right,
that is actually
Brad, respond to those points. Respond to those points.
I'll respond to the point because I actually know the entire story, and I'll give you the whole thing. Kid came to the checkpoint, tried to stab one of my friends. Another one was about to pull the trigger when another soldier jumped in front of the kid, grabbed him, threw him down to protect him, and they arrested him. During the interrogation, they found out why this kid, when he did this, he wanted to go to Israeli prison because the Palestinian Authority was not helping him out and his life better in an Israeli prison and would be living there. And yes, that I think is sad. I think that's
so what can be done? What can be done?
Where violence starts.
What can be done? Like if you hear something like that, why don't we just take this conversation and go towards solutions? Kyle and Dolly, you hear something like that, and I mean, once again, Brad's saying that's what was found in interrogation. what can be done about this? How do we change what is going on there? Like, when would anyone think in their right mind that a 7-year-old kid would rather go to an Israeli jail to get treated better than his actual home? And I mean, whether or not total blame should go to the Palestinian Authority or towards Israel, I mean, that's another topic. But like, what can be done about like change? Like you brought up, it's a generational thing, Kyle, before. So maybe that. Why don't you answer that? What can be done to change this? To change that type of mindset?
One of the things that needs to be reiterated and readdressed, and I can't emphasize this enough, is that we have to focus on the foundation, the genesis of these problems. It's not enough to simply prune the leaves. We have to get at the root and branch of it. And the root cause of this is Israeli aggression. It's occupation. It is denial of basic human rights, and it is dispossession of over three-quarters of a million of people.
Well, we already 1948. We already spoke about human rights. I don't want to go. I don't want to.
We've already been over that.
Yeah, we already talked about it.
I think it's a term
we've already been over that. We covered like
we haven't clarified at all what that term even means. I think it's nonsensical.
We definitely.
Well, that's a very well-established argument throughout all of legal jurisprudence and international law. So if you're confused, I'm quite sure you could do a couple of Google searches and educate yourself on the topic.
I understand
but that's
it.
not what I'm here for.
And I understand a little bit better because I did study this in school. So I still don't understand what you're referring to. And one thing I learned in political philosophy is that when someone starts bringing up the term human rights, they're going into the ambiguous world where you really don't need to substantiate it, and your argument is really invalid because you can't substantiate what's being done. So you're going to use this arbitrary term, human rights, to say that they're violating because it's got this nasty sound to it that you're violating someone's human rights. And I still don't understand what it is that they're doing that they are violating. What rights are being violated?
Well, this is, like I said, well established. It's very well established. You can just go to UN.org and type and search for the UN Declaration on Universal Human Rights.
Alex,
and you will find at least 20 or 30 of which Israel is in violation of.
Brad.
It's just that simple.
And how many are in the Palestinians
Israel is in the wrong, and you can.
Wait, how many are the Palestinians in violation of?
That's not the issue.
Wait, yes it is.
That's not the issue.
No. You're going to say that one side is committing human rights violations, but the other side is immune?
One side is occupied, the other is the occupier.
So your statement is that there is an occupying force. The opposing side has blatant authority to do whatever they deem morally right, even if it's murdering innocent women and children. That's okay in your mind. Because they're the occupier.
I never said it was okay, but that's not the.
That's a human
I never said that's okay.
And you're saying that doesn't make a difference. It's irrelevant.
Kyle,
that's not what I'm saying at all. Now you're just demagoguing.
No.
Now you're just resorting to pure demagoguing.
You're saying that the Palestinians, the human rights violations that they commit are irrelevant. That's what you just said. I'm not sitting here and making.
I didn't say that at all.
Guys.
So what are you saying?
No, you were making stuff up.
You're saying that the Israelis commit human rights violations.
I'm saying we're talking about Israeli human rights violations because Israel is the occupying force. It is incumbent upon them to rectify that.
How come these human rights violations never get to the International Criminal Court or never just at the United States government?
Israel isn't a member of the International Criminal Court.
Yeah, there's good reason because they are unfairly treated there on a regular basis. Like, quote, Zionism is racist.
Oh, right. Everybody is anti-Semitic. Everything is anti-Semitism.
Wait, how many resolutions have there been against Israeli action in the UN? How many resolutions have there been against Israeli action? And how many are there against Palestinian? I agree with you. There's a lot. How many are there against Palestinian atrocities that have taken place?
Not nearly as many because Israel has committed so many more.
See the number I'm holding up? 0. That's the amount of times Palestinians have been condemned in the UN.
Okay, guys.
That's because the Palestinians have the unalienable legal right
Okay.
to defend themselves.
Okay, guys.
Armed resistance is everyone's legal right under occupation.
Guys.
You have no legal right to shoot a rocket at a school.
That's the same for you then, Brad.
Neither do you to bomb UN schools.
Wait. You're already talking that there's no legal right to shoot at schools, and I'm asking myself why Israel was shooting at schools in Gaza. Most of the victims are
because when you start violating the Geneva Conventions of Warfare, and I agree with you, there isn't until someone's violating the rules of warfare, which is committing an international crime by hiding weapons inside schools, launch points inside schools. And
actually, that was
debunked. I've watched.
Actually, that was debunked.
Yeah. I'd like to say I've seen the videos. I've seen them live. I've seen them shooting the rockets from schools. So don't tell me that this has been debunked. This is nonsense. Furthermore, when they hit these sites, they make sure they're evacuated.
Guys, I want to bring up one quick point that people. Brad, do you know the name of the kid who you were referring to in that story that got interrogated? Do you know his name?
I posted the article in the chat. I don't remember his name.
Okay,
and I was wrong. He wasn't 7. He was 13. I found the article. I posted it. You know what? Let me just do something quickly. Let me send it to you in a Facebook chat.
Okay, and then I'll post. Yeah, maybe I think you're. Okay, I'm gonna send it to me in Facebook.
I don't want you to think that I'm making this up. I actually went and found it, looked it up.
You're not talking.
Okay, and then guys, I want to ask an important question. Right after this, Brad, just tell me when you've sent it, okay?
Obviously German. And my brother was 4 years old at this time, and I have a really clear memory about one thing. Actually, don't talk about it that much, but I would like to bring it up because we were talking about, violations towards children and how to justify them from your side. I remember I got a puppy from my uncle as a present, and my brother and I, we were walking the puppy at that time. We were by ourselves. My cousin was, walking behind us. I think 93. 90. Yeah, I'm quite old now.
So anyway, the first intifada.
So the thing was, we were walking with a puppy, and I couldn't speak Arabic. My brother couldn't. We only spoke German. And there were 2 Israeli soldiers coming up to us, and they were starting to bully us around. They were, in my memory, they were even really young. And I have to say, I have been with my brother. We were both kindergarten kids. He was bullying us around, and I was trying to say in German, "Oh, please, leave us alone," or "What are you doing?" I have no clue what I was saying. But they were starting to laugh because we spoke a strange language. And then he was holding my brother, like here, on his, how do you say it, sleeve? I don't know how you say it in English. So he couldn't run away. And then they were starting to kick my dog, my puppy, to death in front of my eyes, in front of mine and my brother's eyes. And we're laughing. This is for no reason. Just out of boredom. This is my memory. This is my memory, and this is what really happened to me in my childhood. As a German, I'm talking as a German. I wasn't. It doesn't matter if I'm a Palestinian or not.
I'm agreeing with you. When stuff like that happens, the soldiers are wrong, and if it's reported, they're court-martialed and jailed. It's a democratic army. This isn't a totalitarian state.
Do you honestly think, Brad?
Brad, I just wanted to let you know.
Brad, do you want?
I just sent Max an article in the text chat sent to you, Brad, corroborating the fact that during the 2008-2009 Operation Cast Lead, no rockets were fired from the UN schools.
Is it this UNRWA, Kyle?
Yes.
Okay, so Brad, I'll send that to you on Facebook just because
I was referring to in the Gaza war that they were the most recent one.
Okay.
That they were firing.
Guys,
the most recent one.
You still say it's unsubstantiated?
Don't know. I don't know what that building is. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So just one thing that I want to say to the people that are watching this video right now. My partner Alex is conducting another conversation on Israel and Palestine, and it's in the same channel. So if you guys are, interested in hearing another person's opinion, I believe it's a Palestinian individual. He's American though. You can feel free to leave here and go into that other room. Past that. That was my only announcement. So what I was going to say next is I want to ask an important question. If
Yes.
there's going to yeah, what's up?
I would actually like to ask a question for Kyle and Dahlia here.
Ask a question. Ask away.
Now, we actually wanted to focus on the most recent Gaza incursion here. And given what was going on, I'm curious, how can you justify the shooting of missiles at distinctly innocent civilian targets? What justification is there for that?
Okay, first of all,
That's a really good question.
for me, there's never a justification for any kind of violence, but I would use the same justification as you do, self-defense, right? Isn't that
self-defense usually refers to hitting a military target.
Well, it's in your case, it's the same. In your case, it is the same because you are just bringing up, certain examples that, for me it sounds a little bit like propaganda, but it doesn't matter right now. But it's the same. It's from the same perspective.
What's the same perspective I'm missing?
It's the same perspective.
Are you saying that there are weapons in the Israeli schools?
It's the same. Well, you were shooting at schools as well. Most of the victims were actually children or women or old farmers.
That were being used as human shields.
I am not supporting any kind of violence, and I'm not supporting if children on any side are dying or suffering, even if Israeli children do. This is absolutely not, in my interest, and I would never support that. But if you ask me right now how to justify it, it's also self-defense in this case.
Okay.
And then you're also
Wait. Brad. Let Kyle. Let Kyle. You said it. You think it's self-defense. Kyle, do you, in regards to the shooting of missiles at, the southern cities in Israel, do you have a different answer past Dahlia that it's self-defense that you want to bring up?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with the rocket firings, but saying that they are fired at schools and at civilian populations, what's being failed to be addressed is the fact that these rockets are almost entirely unguidable. You basically point in the general direction and hope for the best. And they're more protests than anything. They have killed fewer than 30 Israelis in, 8 years? They are no threat to anybody in the first place. But second of all, the fact that they're being fired is not the issue. If you really want to get to the bottom of it, you have to check the timeline. The last massacre in Gaza started because Israel murdered a 13-year-old boy playing football. They shot him. They shot and killed him playing in his own yard. That started the violence. Then the rockets.
Brad,
do you know what? Ahmed al-Jabari, who had a long-term truce deal signed. The fact that Israel would assassinate a leader, no, absolutely substantiated. The fact that Israel would assassinate a man who had been working to enforce the truce, I should say, and keeping militant groups from firing weapons, and was quite successful at it. The fact that Israel would assassinate him after he had just finished making a long-term truce deal with Israel and was on his way to present it to the Palestinians, not for the simple reason that you do not want peace. It's just that simple.
Wait a sec. I would like to address your revisionist approach to this. There were already over 100 missiles being fired a day when they assassinated him. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Rockets, not missiles. Big difference.
Number one. Number two, I'm going to actually teach you something from military, from being in the military. You can get within accuracy within 5 meters, that's 15 feet, with those projectiles. So you're saying that it's just...
Maybe if you're firing from an F-16.
No, from the ground. Projectiles. Mortars. Mortars are accurate to within 15 meters. And yes, I've actually done it. I've used a mortar and hit a target within 15 meters. It's not hard.
Okay, go ahead, Brad. Finish your point.
Mathematics. The point that I'm making is, first of all, these things are deadly, that they're being intercepted and blocked by the Israelis, because the Israelis are spending $15,000 in missiles to shoot these things down, and now you're going to say, oh, well, it's obviously not that dangerous.
Americans are spending that, not Israelis.
What? Israel is spending...
Americans are paying for that, not Israel.
It's irrelevant. You understand that this is called bait and switch, what you just did. It's irrelevant who's paying for it. They have to spend shoot a $15,000 rocket to intercept these $5 rockets or $100 rockets because they are projectiles. They are deadly. They're like cannonballs.
So
they hit the ground and they start.
It sounds like the status quo is unsustainable. Then.
Yeah, it's. I would.
Sounds like the status quo is unsustainable, and you would like something to change.
Kyle, that's a.
Perhaps you should stop.
So guys,
both sides.
So both sides are unsustainable. And I mean, I think that was great information from all three of you. Because Kyle, the way you just put it is exactly it. The status quo is unsustainable. So both sides. I mean, there seems to be, from all the people that I'm speaking to, there's plenty of fault to go around on both sides, and I mean, trying to quantify the amount of fault, I don't know how you guys do it, but and I don't know how all these journalists and all those people do it, but it's got to give you a headache trying to quantify each amount of fault that goes towards each side. So my question is how do we move forward? What needs to happen? Is it a two-state solution? Is it a one-state solution? Do settlements need to go totally on halt? Does it need to be easier for Palestinians to go in and out of these borders and through these checkpoints? And we're coming on a decent amount of time we've been speaking. So if you guys want to turn this towards the end of the conversation, I'm fine with that. If you have more to say, that's fine. But can each of you address what needs to go down here? And if I could throw out one other point, do you think it's imperative that, or do you think it's very important that history needs to kind of take a back seat if you want to go ahead with a solution? I want to just throw that last bit at you, and let's go with Dahlia. You go first. What needs to happen?
Well, I would like to have a question. What benefits would be there from a two-state solution, in your opinion?
Are you asking? You're not asking me, right?
No, I'm not asking you.
Okay.
That. No, sorry.
I don't believe a two-state solution is practical. I think a three-state solution is more of the practical solution. I think there should be one state in Gaza, which is its own independent political and cultural entity, one in the West Bank, and Israel. There should be 3 states living side by side in peace. I think that would be the most reasonable thing. I think the cultures are different enough between the 2 areas in question that it calls for it. What needs to happen for that to take place is I think both sides need to be willing to sit down at the table. I think to make the life more sustainable in the West Bank, the Israelis would have to concede, or even be, and I'm sure they would be willing to even build roads specific for the to get from, let's say, the Jenin to Bethlehem, from Jenin to Bethlehem. That there would be some road that only the Arab cars can go on. That would get them there. They wouldn't have to go through any checkpoint. And they would be separate.
But then it would be still separation. Then it would be still...
I agree, but I think part of the problem
not
is
fair,
that
right?
I agree with you. I think the fair thing would be that in the West Bank, that they wouldn't allow both. It would be the same type of freedom that the Jews that live in the West Bank would have the same freedom as the Arabs that live in Israel, that they wouldn't allow to be Jews living in the West Bank.
Okay.
And under Palestinian control. Unfortunately, it's been declared it has to be, as I've heard someone say before, the Palestinian state needs to be unified. So if they can't get this, simple little compromise is that the Arab, or in order for this to work, and the way you want it to work, that there is no separation, that there would be no separation, everyone would be there. I think it would take, as Kyle, I think, pointed out earlier, that there would be, it's a generational thing. I don't think it'll happen because when the textbooks of the children in the PA actually don't even recognize the state of Israel, obviously that they're being taught that this isn't a legitimate entity and they're going to keep fighting.
Okay, Kyle.
And I think it's the same thing on both sides. I think both sides are being trained. I think if it starts with education, everyone understanding what's going on, and a willingness to actually see peace, which I don't think is really there.
Okay, Dahlia, I don't know if you kind of just posed a question. Did you have anything that you wanted to share of something you disagree or agree with Brad's scenario there? And then Kyle, I want to get to you.
Well, actually, it's, I don't know how you imagine also then the economic situation of Palestinians. I mean, you have obviously been there. You saw how they are living, right? You have seen how the country looks itself. It looks like a third world country, even worse. This is how they live. This is how they don't have anything, basically. They are, how do you say it? They're expelled from the rest of the world. Any kind of resources that we have here in the West, they're not even close to it. So would that also change then in your approach? Would they have then the same resources like you guys have?
The simple answer is yes, and that can happen today if their controlling government body would stop embezzling the funds and use it for what it's been earmarked for. When the United States is giving millions upon millions of dollars specific. What? You think the reason isn't that the money that's being given to help these people isn't getting to the people?
No,
I think that's one of the major problems.
But Brad, the major problem is that no other countries, that there is no import-export possibility for Palestine just because of the occupation itself. There are only certain countries that I can count on a few fingers they can trade with. This is why there are no resources. It has nothing to do with, money that goes to the government, and I don't know about this kind of, So it has nothing to do with that. It's basically about the occupation itself, that there are no possibilities for the Palestinians to have economical, that they can expand economically or progress in that,
Okay.
Do you know that before the second Intifada, that your relatives and the people in Gaza used to work for the Israelis? They used to come by. There was a relative, when Oslo was still being worked on, they would come in, they would work, they would make a living, and everything was working out fine. And then there was this Intifada where the Israelis had to shut down the borders to protect their citizens.
So how do you, can I ask him, Max, or is it not going too far because you wanted to go into another direction?
No, go ask away. I just wanted to hear Kyle's. I want you to ask your question, but then I really want to hear Kyle's response to my question with the whole solution.
Okay, then we listen to Kyle. That's fine.
Kyle,
well, the important thing is
your solution.
The important thing is to recognize that myself, Max, Dahlia, and Brad, we are not going to hash this out here today, and this is not our decision to make. The only person who has any vested interest in this is Dahlia, as she is Palestinian. And I suppose you as well, Brad, as you have Israeli citizenship. The fact of the matter is that a two-state solution is dead. It's gone. It's impossible. The Israelis have seen to that. They have been working towards that objective for decades. They have been colonizing the West Bank with their racial colonies, Jew-only roads, Jew-only farms, with heavily armed stuff. No propaganda, just the facts, and I would appreciate if you don't interrupt me.
We want to hear a solution.
Brad, let's hear Kyle's solution.
Let him talk.
Okay. Now, moving forward, I don't believe in a two-state solution. Further than that, I think a three-state solution is absolutely ludicrous. The only viable solution, in my opinion, is a one-state solution. Yes, a one-state solution in which a constitution is written by a bilateral team of individuals, Palestinian and Israeli. You can model it after the United States if you want. I really don't care. Just ensure that explicitly recognized that all people, regardless of race, religion, gender, or nationality, are endowed with certain unalienable rights. They have all equal protection under the law, etc., etc. All settlements in the West Bank, in the meantime, must be stopped. For any negotiations, all settlement activity must stop. With the result ceasefire, Netanyahu just announced 3,000 more settlements being built. There are 3,000 more settlement units being built. That's not somebody interested in peace. That is somebody interested in gobbling up more and more and more Palestinian land, ensuring a two-state solution is unviable. So, Brad, you stated before that Netanyahu says he wants a viable Palestinian state. That's great, but he's speaking with a forked tongue, like a snake. On the one hand, he's saying he would need a state. On the other hand, he's taking up all the land that would make it possible. So which Netanyahu do you believe?
Brad, what's your response to that, Brad?
The one who speaks well or the one who acts?
Brad, what's your response to that?
I was just waiting.
I'll continue after.
I was hoping Kyle would finish first, and then I would answer. But what is it? Well, he offered peace, and then the response is that Abbas goes and basically says, "Go to hell, no peace. We're going to declare our own state, and we're going to do it the way we want to do it." Basically, giving the Michael Corleone response from Godfather 2. My offer's nothing. You don't want to accept it? I think there's zero preconditions you can go on. Doesn't matter what's going on, they need to sit down at the table. Frankly, I think your first comment about the one-state solution, it's not bad. I think there's only one slight problem, that you want this to be based on America. They should have a democracy based on American values, which I think is unfair. I don't see any reason.
I never said that at all. I said it's entirely up to the Palestinians and the Israelis to decide. I'm giving my personal opinion that I believe all people endowed with unalienable rights and all people, Israeli and Palestinian, should be respected and treated exactly the same under the law. That doesn't mean some Jewish judge getting some Jewish guy off when a Palestinian sues him. That doesn't mean a Palestinian covering up for another Palestinian guy when a Jew accuses him of something.
Brad, that
means full equality under the law. And this could be administered in a number of ways. My suggestion would be to have a team of peacekeepers from around the world monitoring the courts, the police, etc., and ensuring a peaceful transition.
Brad, do you agree with that?
No, I don't think there's any reason why. But what he just said is he wants a foreign force to come in there, occupy a democratic nation, and ensure that democracy is still there. Democracy is there. The Arabs that live within the borders of the state of Israel have equal rights. The Palestinian Israelis have the same rights. And Dahlia's shaking her head.
I'm so sorry, Brad, but it is absolutely not true. Alone in Jerusalem.
That only proves that you're incapable of being objective.
I served with the Israeli Arabs.
Brad, Dahlia, what are you referring to?
In Jerusalem, the Palestinian Israelis, however you call them, they have to pay higher taxes. This is just alone that point shows that there is no equality. Higher taxes than the Israelis for living in Jerusalem. And I have been in Jerusalem, and from two perspectives. Once I went there with a Palestinian, so I have been, seen as a Palestinian then, walking through Jerusalem. I don't know what kind of people are those, if those are your police forces or military forces, but they stop you on the street and shopping areas asking for your passport, just like that. This is discrimination, first of all. Then I've been treated so much.
Show me your papers.
I've been treated so much differently walking there as a Palestinian. Then the next day I've walked there as a German. It was perfectly fine how I've been treated, but walking as a Palestinian, and people would not, just simple things, they would go back to the taxes. Why do Palestinians have to pay higher taxes? Palestinian Israelis have to pay higher taxes.
Don't. They physically don't.
They do. Oh, please. Oh, this is absolutely.
They don't. I go something substantial.
Yeah, this is not true.
I'm looking. I'm actually looking on the department.
You're paying higher taxes over there.
Brad, if Dahlia's point is correct, do you see any reason why? If she's correct, is there any reason why they should be paying more? Would you see? Is there any?
Not, and they are not.
But
I'm on the government's website right now, trying to find some sense of where this.
But she's saying that she knows of people who this does happen to. So if that's the case, Brad, if that's the case, do you think it's right? Yes or no?
No, and they can take it they have the legal right to take it to the Supreme Court, which Palestinians typically do, and when something like this happens, the Supreme Court almost always sides with the Arabs. If you actually look at the land disputes in the West Bank, the Palestinians bring lawsuits against the settlers, who they believe are doing this, and frequently the justices there rule in favor of the Palestinians.
Okay. Great.
Yet there's never any compensation or comeuppance for the Israelis who those homes completely destroy lives.
Exactly.
And what about this?
We'll take your word for it.
To the Jews. You keep in mind that the Israeli Defense Force takes down settlements that are illegal. You're saying that they're just bad. They're just oppressing the Arab people. They take down these illegal settlements. Part of the game. The court rules it. Have you ever heard of a place called Gush Katif that the Israeli army went in and they actually removed all the citizens from there, displaced them from their homes, and put them in different places. They still haven't rebuilt their lives so that the Arabs could get their land back. No one talks about that. What's interesting is I just had something brought to my attention. Is that been Arab members of the Israeli Supreme Court. There's a single Arab member of the Israeli Supreme Court.
Oh, did he? I don't know.
Gone.
I don't know if he dropped out or something, but we'll kind of wrap it up. Oh, he might have gotten. I hope there might have been a technical glitch because I still see his name there. So I
can see that too.
Yeah, I still.
Offline.
Yeah, Dahlia, I'm sure it's pretty late over by you, and we've been speaking for a while. I guess I'll leave you both with one point, and I wish I could ask it of Kyle.
A different issue. So I'm having my personal opinion about that, but end of the occupation, for me, end of the checkpoints, end of the apartheid wall.
Hey.
Removing the higher taxes that are actually being paid in Jerusalem, so I can send you the link if you want to.
Please send me it, and I'd like to read it in the Hebrew. I'd like to see that this is actually written, that Arabs pay higher taxes.
Yeah, and it's true. It's true. I know you don't believe it. It's also
on the Ministry of Finance's website in Hebrew, I don't see any of this.
Okay. Guys, here's what I want to leave you guys with one question, because actually on my end, I have to get going, and we've been speaking for a while. We have some Vonvo stuff to do so that next weekend, when other conversations are occurring, they can be a little bit more smoothly. My one question I wanted to leave each of you with is, what message would you like to say, to share with the world, and for anyone that watches this video, okay.
There we go. Nice to see you guys again.
Who the hell was that?
That was great.
Who the hell was
I
that?
feel like we just got high-tech trolled. I feel like we just got trolled.
I think we lost Brad.
Yeah, his flash might have just
Wow.
crashed.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That's like 3 mess ups in a matter of like 5 minutes. Annoying. Okay, 1 second. I want to ask each of you a last question. What message would you send? Would you like to communicate with the world for anyone that were to watch this video about the current crisis going on over there? If Brad, gets back in here, I'll ask him the same thing. So, Kyle, you want to start?
Sure. The message I would leave is that we all bear personal responsibility for this, no matter where we live, no matter who we are, no matter what we believe. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I can think of no greater injustice than being taxed to finance an entity that is colonizing and literally wiping off the map the Palestinian people, the Palestinian state, and doing their best to annihilate the Palestinian culture. I'm not content to sit here and watch and just sit idly by and think that things are okay and this is 1,000-year-old conflict between Muslims and Jews, because it's not. It's really not. This is a political conflict, 65 years in the making, or slightly longer than 65 years in the making, that we have the power to stop. You and I, watching this video right now, we can stop it. All it takes is people with the willpower and the ability to stand up, speak up, and denounce wrongdoing, wherever it is, whenever it is, and whoever is doing it. We need to let go of internal biases. We need to let go of our prejudices. And we need to let go of these whimsical notions of nationalism and petty squabbles. We need to stand up for is what is right. And what is right is equal rights for all, self-determination for all, and a right of return for all people who have been displaced, dispossessed, adversely affected. Decisions that these so-called leaders, the past 65 years have made. We need to stand up to our governments. We need to stand up to the Israeli and Palestinian governments as well. Clearly, the status quo is working. We need to work for a just and durable peace in the region. Only we can do that. Thank you.
Okay. Brett, we'll go to Dahlia next. What would be your message that you would like the world to know about this conflict?
Well, I couldn't say it more beautiful than Kyle just did. Really, really amazing, Kyle, by the way. I really, really love your work. All I can add now to the world, especially the Western world, and especially Germany also, who is scared to raise their voice against Israel due to some historical facts. I would like to ask people not only to inform yourself based on news and media, but also try to go on platforms on both sides. I'm really saying also on both sides. Talk to people who are at locations, try to inform yourself, and try to, create your own picture about the situation. I can just say from my own experiences and things I've seen and, things based on my family, that the people in Palestine, and I don't know if Brad is going to deny this now or not, but the people in Palestine are truly suffering from the situation. And we have to at it from a perspective of human beings. Human beings are being treated horribly, and they are suffering from their situation. They are having absolutely no human rights. And each day of them is a depressive day because they do not know how their future is going to be. They cannot create a free and open future that like we can do because those rights do not exist for them because they are living in a country that is not recognized as the whole, and also because they, cannot expand job opportunities. So it is important for the world, my side, to inform yourself and to talk to people at location. And I have to say one more thing. I have Israeli friends, Fred, and those friends are actually, well, they are calling themselves anti-Zionists, and they're actually fighting for the rights of the Palestinians. And those are people that are living in Israel and that were raised as, Israeli Jews, and they actually realize that what is happening, what their country is doing to the Palestinians is not fair. So actually, there's also a different perspective from people who are from your country. So maybe, I would also like to ask you to try to put, to see it from the perspective of the Palestinians once in a while.
Right.
And try to realize what things are going for them.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Dahlia. And Brad, what would be your message?
My message is, don't take our word for it. I've heard a lot of stuff said today, and you want to know what? I've heard a lot of stuff that's partial truths, half truths by everyone. The thing I could say is this: you need to. Yes, that's what I said. We are all guilty of twisting the truth and bastardizing reality. You say injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, Kyle. And my response to that is, so too is with the words that you say. When you use unjust words to describe a conflict, that is also a threat to justice. Because twisting the truth is the same thing as kill to a degree. I'm getting off on a tangent, but it is unjust to start describing the situation there using terms like apartheid. What's the other one that I hear that I always like? Holocaust, genocide. When you start redefining terms that have specific meanings, historical connotations, to apply them to conflicts, a lot of stuff gets fuzzy and you just don't understand the generalization. You are trying to put a specific conflict in the framework of other things. When you say genocide, yes, terrorism as well, I will agree with you. It needs to be specifically defined, and you can't redefine it based on certain conditions. For example, terrorism is anyone that their goal is to spread terror. The intent, the main thing to take from this is that this conflict is very complex, and looking at one side of it and saying, oh, these are colonizers, they're all bad, which is basically what I've heard, is doing an injustice to one side. It's taking a side, saying the other side is at fault, and refusing to acknowledge any validity to what they're doing.
Okay.
Basically, from what I've heard from Kyle, is the Israelis have no right to self-defense. They don't have a right to defend their citizens. It doesn't make a difference. It does not make a difference that if they're under attack, nothing. They don't have a right to self-defense. The reason that those fences are there, that Talia calls the apartheid fences, is because Palestinians were walking from Bethlehem into Jerusalem and blowing up buses. Kind of like Mexicans, they put up the fence in Arizona because Mexicans were freely walking across the border. So they put up a fence to stop this from happening. That is the purpose, self-defense. And if you don't have a right to self-defense...
You want to put up a fence, do it on your own borders, not other people's.
Just to respond to Alma,
guys,
a wall and a fence are the same thing. They serve the same purpose, preventing people from getting in.
Okay.
But the basic message is, do the research yourself. Don't listen to us. Sit there, read both sides of the thing. Because if you only have a single perspective, it's very hard to think rationally on this.
quick little side, real quick question. And Quick last question, and can we tie it up real quick? Because then I want to close this off because I have to get on my phone with two partners. Okay, quickly. Brad just mentioned we have to do our own research. Do you think listening to the media is one of the corporate media is probably the worst route you can take to try and come up with these conclusions? Dahlia, yes or no?
No, I mean, definitely not. It's always important to inform yourself with facts, and you just have to know which media to use in this case. In this case, I'm not going to, scream out names of right now because I don't think that's my position to do it. But definitely, it depends what kind of media. You cannot say that,
Okay.
It's just important to also get first-hand information.
Okay. Kyle, do you think the corporate media, is a place to formulate these conclusions?
Absolutely not. There's less truth in corporate media than there is in random blog posts on the internet. You can find the truth from so many different avenues. There's no reason whatsoever to turn on your TV and expect those talking heads to tell you anything but a convenient lie.
Right. Brad.
If you want to educate yourself,
yeah.
The most important thing you can do is educate yourself. Read books. It is the only way you're going to get information from both sides of the aisle. You can read Palestinian authors and you can read Israeli authors. You can read Christian, Muslim, and Jewish authors. It doesn't matter. Read for yourself and decide for yourselves.
Right. Okay.
I would like to highly recommend the book Dying to Win by Dr. Robert Pape. It's about strategic logic, suicide terrorism, and it helps
Kyle,
understand why it happens.
Kyle, do us a favor and type the name of the book.
Freedom Sailors.
Type the names of the books, please.
Okay, and Brad, corporate media, is it a worthwhile opinion to be trying to formulate conclusions on this?
I just want to start to say, I think Kyle's point was almost dead on. Though I do disagree with him about the corporate media. I think it's good and bad. I think that it's the only value that you get from corporate media is really hearing another viewpoint. And I think that's what he's the point that Kyle was trying to make is, in order to make the decision for yourself, you need to hear everything. So there is some value, however little it is, from corporate media, but yes, the way to do it is research, and read stuff from both sides of the aisle. Go there, see what's going on both sides, and not just Tel Aviv or Ramallah or something like that. Go to, because people really neglect the areas, like if you go up north in the Golan Heights to the Druze villages, you go to the border towns near, on both sides of the Gaza fence. I think it's important to see how life is being lived there and what they feel.
Okay.
And yeah, that's the best way to get your information.
All right, great. Thank you so much for all you guys joining me here today. I know Kyle, you enjoyed your conversation earlier today. I hope you enjoyed this one just as much, if not more. Brad, you've been on Vonvo before, and I mean, this is the first time you probably participate in a real dialogue on something very important. So I hope you enjoyed it. And Dolly, I hope you enjoyed your first experience, your first Vonvo. I hope it was exciting, and we hope you come back.
Nice meeting you, Brad.
Nice meeting you too, Dahlia.
Thanks so much, guys.
It's a pleasure, guys. I just want to close by saying this has to stop. I think it's a good idea for all of us to drop everything and devote our lives to making this stop. Rachel Corey, rest in peace.
All right, sweet. Thanks so much, guys, for participating. I'll speak to you all soon. All right.
Okay. See you later, Maxie.
Later.